I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone, and let the roll reflect that all council members are present and a quorum has been established. Council, are there any corrections to the March 21st meeting or workshop? Seeing none, they are moved. Comments from the public audience. We will accept any comments from the audience. Some have been emailed and the council has received them. If you'd wish to speak to the council tonight, please step up to the podium, state your name and address. And we also have Zoom option if anyone is willing to speak to Zoom. So at this point, we will hear comments from the audience. Okay, no comments from the audience. Council members, are there any council items to be considered? Okay, council, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Fulch. Discussion? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Tonight we are awarding of contracts and public hearings. We have the 2022 neighborhood infrastructure improvements. We will have a public hearing and then a discussion by council and possible vote. Welcome Ryan Stemsky, and Ryan is with our Public Works Department. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Are we on this one? This keyboard? Yeah. All right. Got two keyboards up here. You threw me off a little bit today. So tonight we're at the assessment hearing portion of our 2022 neighborhood infrastructure improvements. So we'll go through a brief presentation and open up to questions, followed by the hearing tonight. So just a quick recap, we do have 5 areas that we are improving this summer. So pretty large project. Area 1 is 5th and Ash. Area 2 is Park Lane and Park Court. Area 3 is the half block between Ramsey and Tyler. Area 4 is 13th, Lilac and Hillside. And our 5th area is just south of 46 in the Riverwood neighborhood. We did discuss the public improvements back in our March meeting, but you may recall the total project cost is $4.3 million for the improvements in the 5 areas that I just went over. Those are funded as you see here. We've got about $1,975,000 in bonded debt for the project, $1,360,000 in assessments, $390,000 in sanitary sewer funds, and $575,000 in water funds for the project. Jumping a little bit into our assessment policy, the important thing to note here is that the city did and continues to hire a third-party independent appraiser. They go into each specific neighborhood and they take the proposed improvements that we have scoped out, and they determine and compile an appraisal report for each specific neighborhood. They value the land, the entire property of the folks along the neighborhood improvements. They look at those valuations of each property before the project and what they would be valued at after the project. That net difference is the special benefit based on the improvements. So kind of jumping into that a little bit further, we take those appraisal reports are usually a range. They give us a range of improvements. We at the staff level then take the lower end of that range and we multiply that by 90%. So we take a little bit off. We do have marks we need to hit for bonding reasons that we have to assess so much on a 429 project. But this is our ordinance-backed policy for how we establish those rates. It is important to note that a standard lot assessment is the rate times the property frontage. So the assessment is carried to the property in whole. It shouldn't be looked at as a rate individually. It should be looked at what the entire property benefits from the project improvements. Now we do have irregular shaped lots on this year's project, like we do typically every year. We look at those in a way where we're trying to standardize those irregular lots compared to their neighboring assessed lots. So just because a lot may have a interesting shape, they still have a driveway fronting a street improvement, and they, from an appraisal standpoint, get valued out the same as their neighboring lot. So that's something to be mindful of as we go through the presentation. I'll have a little more specifics on a cul-de-sac lot in a couple slides here. Now, corner lots, our ordinance prescribes that those get a little bit of a break because they have two sides that are being improved. We take the rate times the assessment rate for the short side of the lot times the entire length of that short side. For the long side of the lot, we take 25% of that length, so giving them a little bit of a break. So 25% of that length times the rate. Looking at the assessments for the 5 areas that we're improving this year, I'm going to kind of jump down to what the standard assessments are for a kind of a standard lot in these neighborhoods. We have a lot of properties, a lot of different things going on in each neighborhood, but in Area 1, that's 5th and Ash, for the single-family homes in that neighborhood, the standard lot assessment is $5,600. For a townhome, that's $3,240, and that's a reconstruction area. For Park Lane and Park Court, we only have single-family homes in that particular neighborhood. The assessments for them are $5,395 for an average typical size lot. 11th Street is a little different because those are those long sides we're talking about. There's only 2 lots. Those are corner lots. They're long sides front 11th Street. So they have that 25% number included on the Area 3 there. Area 4 is a reclaim neighborhood. That's the 13th Hillside and Lilac. So the average single-family size lot is $4,600 for a lot. And then finally, Riverwood, that's a reclaim area as well for single-family homes. That's a $4,500 per lot assessment, and for townhomes, $1,800 per lot for the reclaim in that particular neighborhood. So looking at kind of a way we do normalization of cul-de-sac lots. So cul-de-sacs are interesting just by the nature and how they're platted. Typically, they're larger in area, but as their particular frontage along the street gets narrowed up and skinny. I mean, you hear pie-shaped lots or things of that nature, but the way we've looked at it is, and the way we've determined this assessment rule, is we look at the stem of the cul-de-sac, so that's the straightaway street, and the bulb, which is the cul-de-sac. So the stem uses that street the same way as those cul-de-sac folks do. They have a driveway front in the street, they take the street in and out. So we look at the front footage on the stem lot. So in this particular cul-de-sac, Villa Court, we have 60 feet of frontage, and we have 62 feet of frontage. The 62-foot lots are the same size or in the cul-de-sac or larger. So we took the 62-foot of frontage and multiplied that for each lot in the cul-de-sac bulb to get a comparable rate to their neighbors on that same cul-de-sac. So just to make a reasonable comparison of similar size lots and similar use on the street improvements. So something important to note for the irregular lots. The assessment totals are about $1,360,000. Of that, the city assessments are about $222,000. That's along park frontage or city-owned properties, something important to note there. The private lot assessments equate to about $1.1 million on the project. We always look at the private assessments as percentage of the bonded debt. This gets into allowing us to get efficient bonds on the project. And so we always check to make sure that that percentage is adequate, and that is this year. We're at approximately 34%. So the payment of assessments. So we will send out statements toward the end of the summer, beginning of fall. Payments really are not accepted in our finance department until October of this year, so that's something to keep in mind. This presentation will go on the website as well. We do accept partial payments with no penalty. Any amounts remaining after November 30th, it's important to note that those assessments get certified to the county tax roll. There's an approximately $50 fee to do that. Obviously, no interest or fees are paid when you pay in full by November 30th, so something to keep in mind. This is a 10-year payoff program. The 10-year payoff would start on your property tax statements beginning in spring of 2023, so the year after the improvements are completed. The interest rates typically have been historically between 3% and 5%. Recent years more like mid-threes. Last year we were actually under 3% for the first time since I've been here, so been pretty competitive rates. So to go through an example of kind of what this looks like if somebody has a mortgage on a property, for example, if we take a 78-foot wide standard lot, we take an assessment of $72.90. I think that is an average lot in the Park Lane, Park Court neighborhood. You multiply those two together, you get almost $5,700 in the assessment amount for a particular property. When you do nothing and let it roll to your county tax roll, let's assume an interest rate of 3.5%. The annual amortized payment is about $675 a month, or sorry, a year, not a month, a year. That breaks down to a monthly payment of $56. So it's important to think of it in those terms. If one has a monthly mortgage, this is the increase to that monthly mortgage based on this particular assessment. So just kind of an example of how this works. Now to keep in mind, the project again offers assessment abatement. So for those that qualify, we do have financial aid on the project again this year. That's offered through the Community Development Block Grant, or the CDBG program. That's funded by the federal government. It's entirely based on income qualifications. So we will mail out an entire packet of information and application towards the end of the summer of this year. Those applications and all these instructions will be in that mailing, but they're to be returned directly to Dakota County and to the specifically the Community Development Agency. The CDA receives those applications, reviews those applications. We don't get involved in any of that, and they determine and provide recommendations based on their review of financials. There's full abatement dollars available if you qualify, and also partial abatement dollars available if you qualify. So great program. We typically have handed out through this program up to $100,000 in a given year through assessment abatement. So it's a real program, and it's beneficial to those who may qualify. New this year, we also have the assessment deferral program here at the city. So if you apply for assessment abatement and do not qualify, here's another option for senior citizens, disabled, or military persons. There's also a financial qualification, and that is the assessments need to total more than 1% of the adjusted gross income for the property. So just kind of an example of that, if you had that earlier example of $5,700 assessment, your installment of that would be $675. So assuming at 3.5% interest again, the adjusted gross income would need to be $67,500 or less to qualify. So that's kind of what's involved with our deferment program. Now, it is important to note as well as the deferment does not forgive the assessment under deferral. It just delays that payment with interest until certain events occur, such as a sale of the lot. So unlike abatement that takes care of the assessment if you qualify, deferment doesn't go away. It stays with the property. So want to make that point very clear. Currently, the forms that kind of go through this information are available on our website under finance. And again, this website will be on the project webpage tomorrow. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. At this time, I will actually open the public hearing. And if you'd like to speak to the council, please state your name, come up to the podium, state your name and address, and we will hear your comments. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Step forward.
My name is Mike Zappa. I live on 1005th Street West, so we're in the number 1 that they're talking about up here. The first thing I want to ask is, when that $50 that they were talking about, is that each time? It kind of feels like a fine to somebody who doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of money. So each time that there's, like on a monthly basis, that $50 a month is $50 a year. Who gets the $50?
Ryan, go ahead if you,
That's a one-time fee for Dakota County's time for processing.
So basically,
One time.
we're paying Dakota County $50, not a year, but the one time relative
One
to the
time
whole
for 10 years.
way that comes together. Because the majority of our area is parkland. That whole edge is just, the park can't pay for itself. And we feel, I have a very low income. And I'm retired, on my retirement, but I also have a wife who's disabled, just a whole bunch of things you were talking about. But we don't know exactly what it is that we have to provide or that type of thing and who we need to provide it to. So what are we actually, what information do I need as a relatively poor person to know how the next step I'm going to be taking in that particular area? This house is on a corner, but the corner's already been done. I don't remember how many years ago, but they came in and they put a whole bunch of things inside of that particular intersection, and then proceeded to do some damage to my house that we couldn't prove because we didn't have pictures in it ahead of time. It was one of those things that was very frustrating, but I'm real cautious and have some circumspect about the whole way that this is going to come together. I have a daughter who is a civil engineer, and so she's told me a couple different things that I probably forgot. But I'm doing my best just to present that we are not very wealthy, and that's a lot of money for us to just shell out and to add an extra $50. Like I said, I didn't know where the $50 was each time. I guess that's what I have to say. So I just want to present that to everybody here. Dave, do you have anything that you want to toss out?
No, I was just kind of wondering, as far as the street, are they gonna, when they do it, are they redoing the approachments and everything, like for everybody's lots? They're redoing the whole street, they're taking everything, curbs, everything out?
Fifth and Ash, yep.
Yeah.
And what length of time will this last? I mean, how long will the inconvenience be in the summertime? Do we lose our whole summer?
The project is programmed over the summer, with 5 areas. They're gonna be moving around to different areas.
Right.
So, don't have a contractor, locked up with a schedule yet, but we'll get that information out when we have it.
Okay. They used to store equipment behind our house at one time to be able to do all the things that they were doing in the particular area because it's a park. They could just kind of park over there. But when they were digging up things, they had things that are very, very old in the street in that area, and some of it had lead in it, had some other things. So we actually had to go to the powers that be at that particular time and tell them, hey, we do not want lead along the whole back side of our house and people dropping it in as a dump hole. So that part has to do where the well house is. And I would just like to throw something in that please don't use that area again. Thanks for your help.
thank you, Mr. Zappa.
You're welcome.
Would anyone else like to speak at this time? Oh, excuse me, Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I'm not sure if you were aware or not. Part of the presentation, there was a section in there that spoke to some assistance if you qualify for assistance. So that is there for people in the community that can benefit from that. So.
We heard about that, but we didn't know what it would be.
Yep.
Or know about it.
Yep, and so I guess we won't be able to educate fully today at this point, but I would recommend that you come into City Hall, and we will be sure that you get the information that you need to complete whatever forms are needed, and hopefully that'll be a resource for you.
Packet, so
Yep.
I understand that. That's what we're going to do.
Perfect.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes.
I'm Scott Mulaney. I live at 1165 Teal Way. And there's a lot of numbers here, so I'm just wanted to ask Ryan about, is that $72 or whatever, is that the cost per foot? Is that, or was that just an example? That's what, I mean, how much are we paying on Teal Way and
$75 per foot.
75? And is that throughout the city, $75 a foot?
It's different in every neighborhood.
Okay, that's what I'm kind of, because you were talking something about this assessed value before and after property values and everything. You know what I'm,
Sorry.
Was that-
John wants me to speak into the microphone.
Oh.
I guess, sorry, you go ahead and ask.
oh, well, I was wondering about that property assessed value before and after. So you take the value of the property that you're putting the tar in front of, value of the house, and assigning that a number, right? So now, the tar doesn't know what's on the lot. It should be, to me, it should be the same as up on the hill or anywhere else. Now, if your value goes up because of that road, is that correct? Is that what you're saying? Maybe I'm lost.
No, you're correct. You're correct.
Okay.
There's an appraisal that's done before
Appraisal.
the improvements and after the improvements. The
Okay.
net difference is the special benefit to the entire property,
Right.
not the home, the property,
But
the land.
that would be a temporary benefit, because the road's gonna wear out again. So now you're bumping up our taxes and everything else.
Not
Because-
bumping up your taxes.
Well, it seems they always go up, but now you got a higher value on your property because of a new road that's gonna wear out. I don't know if you see my point or not, but. And so that's not it's not the same cost per foot throughout the city. It's all on a assessed value,
By neighborhood,
okay,
correct.
but to me, it seems like road's gonna wear out. So you got a bubble there in value that's not true. That's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Hi there, I'm Lori Michael. I live on Sherman Way in the Riverwood section. And question, you said the interest is at 3.5. Are we going to be locked into that no matter what the economy does? Since you put it up there?
You will be locked into, we don't have the assessment rate today. There's a formula that finance charges, so whatever our bond rate is plus 1.5%. We will mail that out with your final statement.
And that will be,
That'll be end of the summer timeframe. So it'll be, like I was saying, it's been historically right around 3%. And then, yep, you'd be locked in that.
Historically.
Yep.
it's a different year right now. Also, when you're looking at Riverwood and Village Trail, those two, how long do you think those are going to be dug up? You wouldn't do both of them at the same time or we're lost, you know, but.
Correct. We will work on the staging with the contractor. It's probably a month worth of work.
Okay.
Is probably what we're talking about, and then they'll stagger that, they'll detour folks in a certain way.
Okay, and my last one is on Riverwood, we don't even have through traffic. Our road is pretty nice, you know, and that you're gonna dig it up and, you know, we'll pay $4,700 for our property, you know, or our assessment. I think that's kinda, who looks at the road and decides if it needs to be dug up or not?
Yeah, we have a condition rating on all of our streets across the city, so we review that annually. We rate the roads, categorize them, group projects, and put them in a capital improvement project. So,
Do they come and look at the road?
yep, we
They
look
do.
at them, rate them, measure cracks, distresses.
Okay.
It's all documented.
All right, and then if we're just getting our resurfaced, we're not getting dug up or anything, how long does that usually take?
That's what I was saying. We'll have to reclaim the streets, remove material, fix curb that needs fixing. We got some storm sewer to put in.
Not not on Sherman Way, I don't believe.
Yeah, well, there's in the general neighborhood.
Okay.
So all that takes time and coordination, and then we prep the base and pave. So, about a month's worth of time.
Yeah, well, I just thought it was interesting, talking to my neighbors, the assessments are so different, and our lots are not that different, you know, and I'm just wondering, like, my neighbor, is she assessed for the post office box and the trail to the park? You know, because hers is so much more than ours, and I'm just wondering, who pays for that? Does she? And why should she, if that's, you know, that's park, that's city?
Then she wouldn't. Only if you have a private, your private frontage on a street improvement. If it's a
Okay.
park or
Well, I'm
anything
just
else,
wondering why hers
it's
was
not
so
a-
much higher than ours. And her lot is not as, you know, we're backed up to the park, so our lots are quite short, you know, so I'm just wondering about that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Yes.
Hi, my name is Sherry Litz. I live at 3533 Village Trail, and I'm part of the Area 5. And my question is, and, you know, one of my concerns is, I've only lived there for 9 years, and I know that area up in there, I thought was a newer area. So I'm kind of surprised I'm getting hit with this major assessment that they're going to be digging up the road. And for me, you would think that the road would be more, how would you say, holes or cracks. I guess I didn't feel that up in my area. There's a lot of that. And so I got a couple of questions for you. One is, when was that road put in? And how long do you anticipate the road to be there before digging it up? Because I know that area is a newer area that was developed. And for the road to be dug up seems a bit extreme, being that it isn't that old of an area. So I'm really kind of questioning that, and I'm sure my neighbors are gonna be, because all of us were built kind of within the same year. You know, we've been there 8, 9 years. And I just, and the next road that you are putting in, how long do you anticipate that to be there for? You know, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and are you doing any improvements on the road to make it last a little longer too? I'm just.
Yep, good questions, good questions.
And I don't know if you're aware of this, but down on 46, looks like they're doing some major construction down there too, right? This following year. And this is really gonna put how would you say, a snarl in coming and going in that area over there. I don't know if you're aware of that too.
The 46 improvements?
Yes. So there's a lot happening in that area at one time again. so.
Yeah, regarding some of those questions, you're right. The greater Riverwood neighborhood was not all done in the same amount of time. The main distresses that focused the capital improvement program were on the north end of the neighborhood. You know, they were much older, and some of the areas you're speaking of,
This is South End.
south end, newer pavements, they're still approaching 20 years, the life of those streets. We look at that because it's kind of foolish to come in and complete a portion of a neighborhood and then see some of the distresses on the periphery. And we're trying to geographically complete that area at one time. When we have the project tore up, we have the economies of scale, get in there and finish that particular area. We did find that there were some distresses on those streets that were indicative of some base failures. So that's why we're in there doing it. As far as life goes, you know, we hope to get 20 years out of that, if not more. We are using new product. We are using new bituminous materials. We're trying to go in and do mill and overlays at no cost if roads can accommodate those. But we base all of our decisions on the distresses we find and document. Other things, we do chip seals, we do crack seals. So we're trying to invest in those new improvements to extend the useful life to get over 20 years. But if you're getting 20 years on a hot mix asphalt road, that's not a bad life. We want to get more, believe me, but we're subject to the freeze-thaw conditions of Minnesota and trying to get better, but that's about the
Is
answer
that
to
the
your question.
average, 20 years, for a residential?
For a residential street, I'd say anywhere from 20 to 25 years, yeah.
Okay. And then what about the sewer and water? Can I ask you that? That's like 100 years, right? Or,
We hope that it's 100 years. Yeah, we've dug up water main 100 years old and without distresses needing replaced, so.
oh,
You're right, we do a leak detection. We do televising of all our sewers before we're doing these road improvements.
to make sure.
To make sure. You will find us out there, we've had a lot of problems with bolts for our hydrants and our gate valves. So we'll be doing spot repairs of those, so you'll see us digging up the water and replacing valves and hydrants, because we've got the road dug up. So you'll see some minor improvements on the water system, but for the most part, in good condition.
Okay, and then another follow-up question. I know that I'm on the Village Trail side at the south end. Now, Village Way is not getting done, and that's like an adjacent road that goes around, right? It's like a big U. That was put in at the same time, wasn't it? And now,
Yeah, again, distress base, we felt that the main collector road was, maybe because it's carrying more traffic, maybe because of
Question,
other
traffic.
pieces, how it was built. We found distresses different from the other streets.
and, okay, that brings me another question, the traffic. I know that on 316, you guys put that barrier in the middle to kind of prevent people from coming through there. The,
Compact roundabouts?
yeah, no, you put a median in the road, so you can't take a left on some of those some of the roads that would get you through the back way. I want to call it the back way. It would take you through the back way and over across to 36 there, you know, by the Ford. And I think that's, I forget what that area is called. Well, are you gonna put something there to prevent people from doing that also, and eliminating cross-traffic like that from that area? Because we get a lot of traffic from that area too, that use our road as a pretty fast, in the mornings. I mean, zoom, 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 zoom. I'm lucky to pull out of my driveway. I mean, it's constant. And I know that there's not that many houses back there. So is that gonna be consideration since we're paying for this road, these upgrades? And we want the road to at least last 20 years, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, no, we don't have any deterrents or anything like that. It's a collector road. It's connecting 36 and 46, County Road 46, so.
But it collects the people over on that
Correct,
area too,
yeah.
because they want to avoid the stoplights, is what they want to do. They want to avoid the stoplights, so they come through there.
Okay.
Instead of 30 miles an hour, they're, sometimes they're really they're clipping along. I'm just,
Okay.
observation. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that, is there any way we could get a 30-mile-per-hour on Riverwood and on Village Trail? Because those people do clip, they don't go 30 miles per hour. So is there any way, I know every once in a while there's a policeman,
Okay.
but it would sure be nice to have a 30-mile-per-hour sign on both ends. Because especially.
Lori, I'm going to ask you to step to the podium,
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry.
State your name and address.
Okay, sorry, you're. Lori Michael again, Sherman Way. Just adding on to what this gal said, on the Village Trail and Riverwood, it would be nice to have 30-mile-per-hour signs on both ends because they do really move. And I know they come around, Trevor, they come around and they're clipping there too. So it'd be nice if we could at least do that. Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do have a process for trying to collect traffic data and speed data. I think you raise a good point, especially with some of the cut-through folks. New pavement, people tend to want to initially drive a little faster too. So I think what we'll do is plan on deploying our traffic counters, collect the data, see what kind of speeds we actually have, and look at those kinds of things. I will say our police department did get some driver speed limit feedback signs. So we're looking at doing a study citywide to try to find out some of those areas where we have the most egregious speeders, and use some of those resources to help this very thing. So, but we do want to collect some data, understand where are our hot spots in the city, and this may be one of them. So we'll continue to look at that and take your comments. Absolutely. Thank you.
You may come up, sure. State your name and address.
My name is Royce Anderson, and I live on 13th Street, 1237 13th Street. And they are doing a reclaim on our street this summer. And the assessment came, and I've got the plat that they gave me, what they're going to work on. And I got assessed, just like everybody else on there, for 77-foot lots, and I only have 50 feet of improved road in front of my house. The rest is barricaded off. The 27 feet of it is barricaded off. I can't get to it on a public road, and I'm getting assessed the same amount as all 77-foot lots on that street, and there's no curb and gutter on that 27 feet, and there's no improvement to the street. It's nothing but broken up driveway, or Oak Ridge Manor's driveway. And it's my property. So I don't think that assessment is correct.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
that's what I have to say.
Brian, do you want to speak to that a little bit, or?
Sure, yeah, no, yeah, I've seen that. So, yeah, you are correct,
Is that my property or not? From this line, my lot line, up to the center of the road, is that my property? It never was a street, was it?
no,
Could
No.
have been.
So is it mine to do as I please? But yet I'm being assessed for it, and it's got no improvements, other than the barricade that the only way I can get to it is drive all the way down on Hillside to then get on the frontage road, go down to Balls Drive, take Balls Drive, and come up the hill on a private road to get to them 27 feet of my lot. That's neither here nor there, but I don't think I should be assessed for it.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I think kind of like what I was talking about in my presentation, the total lot benefit is kind of what we're looking at. So we're using the width of the property, the entire property, to calculate by the rate a total property from driveway access that benefits for the road improvement. So that, I mean, it's not, you make a good point on a literal sense.
Well, what if we went up 6 houses up from mine on that street and cut out 27 feet of his curbing and crumble up the street and put a barricade around it, and how far are you gonna get? That's kind of about the same thing, other than this is just the end of the road, so he won't care. Well, I'm paying taxes on it.
Right, and I, I would say we're improving the end of 13th Street to the extent we can. There's a big grade drop off and other elements that we couldn't extend the road for that purpose. It serves its function the way it's now and the way it'll be improved. So it's kind of different than if we left a section out in a contiguous road section. So I just telling you the facts of the.
It's not accessible, it's not usable, and it's not improved. Now, if somebody comes and looks at it that says, well, we have lots of people that come over, we're missing 2 parking spots. So can I option that you maybe take down the barricade on my side of the half of the street and move it to the end of my lot so I get them 2 parking spots?
I think we have great issues. I mean, I would have to look at particulars.
I think if you come out there, I put blue dots where my property is.
We can look at that. I mean, I think the grade drops off pretty fast, so as long
Well,
as.
it's a road.
Yeah.
It's Oak Ridge Manor's road that the semis come up every day with the food and the garbage trucks drive, and my property is in that road. Part of it, a corner of it. And I don't know the original owner that built my house. I bought it just 7 years ago. But is there some kind of a deal? But according to the abstract, I own to the center of the street, and I own to the center of his driveway over there. So, and yet I'm being assessed just like everybody else on this whole 13th Street, the $4,400 and some dollars, and I'm missing out on 27 out of the 77 feet. And I wasn't getting much satisfaction going down to the Public Works. They were ushering me out.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say that we've looked at these lots with our certified appraiser. This is where it's coming from. We're not in the market analysis business and engineering. We hand these situations over to our certified appraiser who determines value and benefit. And so that's where we get these rates multiplied by frontage to get total benefit to particular property. So that, I understand your literal sense, and I think the council's heard that. I'm just explaining where my staff and others would have conveyed what our appraiser information locked up in the reports has packaged out to say. So I just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Anyone else wish to speak to the council? We do have a couple on Zoom that would like to. If you would bring them in, Dan, please.
Do you have to bring him in? Yeah, I know he's doing it, but.
There we go. Hello.
Hello. Hi, my name is Clifton Bolden. I live on 1101 Park Lane, on Waterhouse Park Falls. And I just had a couple of questions.
Excuse me.
We have a park right across the street from our house, and it's Seniors Park, and we have kids who play in the park. A lot of kids who play in the park, and so we're kind of concerned about the amount of traffic with all the construction. We were wondering how you guys were pulling that.
Technological genius. Nice.
There we go. Sorry. I'm sorry, but we didn't have audio. Could you restate that, please?
I was just wondering how you guys, there's a park across the street from my house, in Seniors Park. And I was just wondering how you guys were gonna handle all the construction with all the equipment and everything, with all the kids. You know, it's gonna be spring and summertime, and I have kids, my neighbors, they have kids, and they wanna be able to enjoy the park and run around, so I'm just wondering how you guys plan on controlling just the equipment and materials and things like that.
Yeah, Clifton, Ryan Stemsky here. The specifications that we have that kind of govern the project parameters kind of have a lot of that equipment being mobilized in and mobilized out, parked in convenient right-of-way spaces, maybe adjacent to the project, not necessarily always right on the right-of-way. They do take notice sometimes to find spaces called boneyards to park their equipment and materials in convenient spots, keep it protected with fencing and coning and things of that nature. So the engineering department is very familiar with working with these guys and building in those provisions to kind of protect our neighborhoods and realize that. Good questions and duly noted, but we would work hard to keep safe conditions with the contractor, and we've got the provisions and the specs to support us.
Right, because you know, with the repaving, you know, my kids, they run back and forth across the street, you know, the whole time. So I just want to make sure.
Ooh. Wait. 1 second, we lost you there. I don't think I touched anything.
I don't think it was you. I think it might be on his side, because he's frozen now.
Does he have connectivity?
Yeah. No, nothing changed here. So I don't know what the heck's going on.
Sorry,
Oh.
can you hear me?
Yeah, it might have been an internet thing. Okay.
Sorry, is that my internet? Sorry.
It might have been, yep.
Sorry about that. Actually, I got one last question, if you can hear me, actually. Just since there is a park across the street, what part of the city, does the city pay any part of the of the fees that are associated with this?
Yes, the city, if they have frontage along the benefiting street, those frontages are calculated in the assessment roll as well.
Okay,
Yep,
okay.
city-owned parcels, yep.
That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? Okay. There he is. Okay. Welcome, Ryan.
Yeah, sorry, it locked me back in. Ryan Carl, 3121 Teal Court. Obviously, in this area, I see that we need these improvements. I think our neighbors have been here since mid-80s when the development first came in. I think that was the last resurfacing except for the patchwork over the past 15 years since my wife and I have lived here. My question is, so for I guess it'd be the section 5 of that Riverwood area, with that reclaim, are they gonna be affecting any of our like 5-foot easement with redoing of the curbs, like actually on people's property? Or I guess a little bit more detail of how much is it gonna come to our property line and be affected with resodding or damage to people's property in the construction?
Yeah, for the nature of a reclaim project, one of the things and the reason why we do a reclaim project is when the curb is generally in good shape. So we're gonna have spot repair of curb and gutter or driveway ends and aprons if and when needed. So we go through, after we reclaim up the roadway, and those sections that are cracked up, broken, not draining, we'll just take those 5-foot, 10-foot sections out, replace them, cure them, prep the street, and then pave the new street. You may have nothing on your property line, or you may have one of those sections, and then we need about 3 feet behind the back of the curb to set up forms, and then we would restore that area with, back to turf grass, so. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. I guess my other question is, our pitch, we don't really have curbs per se, they kind of just slope. Again, it's not like a true curb, it's more of a slope into the sod. Are they repitching that at all, or is it gonna be pretty much as existing to match?
It'll be as existing if it drains and it's not cracked up, is the best I can tell you. I've got your address down. We can take a look specifically to your property and stop by as we're getting ready for the project, for sure.
It just seems like all of our neighbors and us, that pitch is so steep that if you have a low riding car, it bottoms out onto the driveway. It just seems like it should be, I don't know if reassessed would be the correct terminology, or it just seems like it's very steep in that sense. And if you're reclaiming, this would be the time to approach that issue.
Okay, we'll take a look.
And then I guess my last question is, it seems like I have the same question everyone else does. So the first part of the question is, what year were these, I guess, market value of our house to get the equation of how much I'm paying per foot? What year was that taken from?
We did the appraisal report last year and this year for the project. So it was a kind of a 2-year span, because we had so many different neighborhoods. We did multiple different minor appraisal reports for each neighborhood. And it wasn't necessarily it's not looking at the value of your particular home. It's looking at the value of your property as an entirety.
Okay, so I don't know, with all the information you guys have sent out, I understand $75 a foot, but then you have this equation that seems like it's kinda, not really concrete, if you will. So I'm just gonna be transparent, my, estimated value last year was $277 on my house. This year's $263, and then I own 36 feet of property of my curb. Can you give us all an example of, and I'm paying $4,800. I can't find the equation to equal what you guys are charging me for it, if that makes sense.
So you have a 36-foot wide frontage?
That's the curb line, yes.
Well, what do you, I mean, it's based on your property frontage along the street.
But I'm also in a court too, so I don't know if that has another factor into it. Like,
Gotcha, okay, so you're a cul-de-sac lot.
yes.
Yep, yeah, no, that, I had a slide on that earlier where, basically, we're using, standardized lots in cul-de-sacs to equate that unit per se, back to the cul-de-sac lots around the, those that actually have the shorter frontages or the pie-shaped frontages. So you're getting a number from your neighboring standard lots, to value your property. So you wouldn't
So what
find
was that again? Was it like 65 feet roughly?
62, yeah, probably, yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay, so, okay. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you. No one else on Zoom? Okay. At this time, I will close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thanks, everyone, for their questions and comments. One I do ask staff to look at is the one out on, with the irregular lot over on 13th Street, that extra portion. I know what he's talking about. I think if there is a barricade, it's something we need to look at and work with the homeowner on that, because what if we stop the road and part of their lot would not have a road then on the end of it? And can we do that? So I just think we should go out there, and I understand where he's coming from on that little section. That, or we got to finish it the right way and finish it at the end of the street and put a curb into it and make the drainage fixed, if we can. That's just my 2 cents on that. We go through this every year. It's such a perceived challenge trying to figure this out, from irregular lots to basic lots. I trust staff. I sit on the committee that goes through this, and we're trying to find, using that independent assessment really helps me justify what we're doing here, because a portion of these streets are all being paid by taxpayers. The perceived, what you think is, oh, we're paying for the road, is not, you're not paying for it completely. The city's paying a portion of it, we're assessing part of it, but we also have fees that you pay with your water and sewer paying for that. So it's kind of a big equation. I give Ryan and his staff credit. They really put this equation together and try to make sure it's fair for the rest of the community. And I understand it's a challenge, and I got a home too, and I got to figure out when it's my turn for this. But I really think, we ask these same questions that you're asking. How long will that road last? How do you determine when he needs it? I'm confident this staff is going out there, and when they say they camera the lines and they can find innovation and recoat that line under there and save from digging up that road, they're doing really good things. So I think, I just wanted to let the community know we put a lot of faith in these engineers, and they're doing their homework to get us to where we're at today. I applaud you, Ryan. I understand these are questions, but I got the addresses here, that we should follow up with each one just to verify, have another one-on-one with them, and try to get those questions answered that they're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilmember Vaughn, I just want to basically repeat what you said on the odd barricade. And now that I put a face to the property. I've always wondered why that was like that anyway, so it probably is a good opportunity to be creative on how to finish that off so it doesn't look like an afterthought kind of thing. So that'd be great to find a solution there that works for everybody, since we're already digging into it. And then a couple of questions for you. Could you remind us what percentage is bonded and versus what percentage is assessed roughly for a project? So like if I'm getting work done in front of my home, I'm paying what percent of the total actual cost of my portion?
Yeah, about 30% is what the assessments cover.
Right.
Year in and year out, right around that mark, and then 70% other bonded and other resources.
So the community as a whole through fees and taxes, it's not free, we are paying for it, but the community as a whole is paying 70% of the improvement and the homeowner's on the hook for 30%, so.
Correct.
And then improvement to the property wise, is it beyond 30%? Is that the effect?
Right, that's the complex market analysis that's going on.
Right.
At the end of the day, what I was getting at is they provide us a range of benefit.
Correct.
We take the lower end of that range and we knock it down to 90%.
Right.
Based on our ordinance, because we don't want to push these assessments to where they shouldn't be. So we do all that to make sure that the benefit exceeds the actual assessed amount.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the process, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Liefeld?
Thank you, Your Honor. So just for council members that were hearing this, we did receive an objection to Mr. and Mrs. Anderson's assessment, and that has been filed, so we will be definitely looking into it. I can remember as a kid cutting up through there on my bike to get to the mall, you know, because it was a much quicker route than going all the way around. So that was always a weird little spot back there. It's the hard thing when it comes to roads. This is one of the things that just, since I've been on council, I know much more about it than I ever thought I would, and it's still really confusing. I live on Pine Street. I'm pretty much guessing every one of you drives on my road a lot. And when the assessment comes out, I'm the one paying it, right? So we all benefit from what's happening. So this is, it's interesting, and I also am not exceptionally wealthy, so the thought of paying, you know, 7, I think mine will probably be closer to 9, because I'm on a corner, but it's worth it. I need a road. I need there to be infrastructure under my road, so God forbid if my house catches on fire, I want the water to get to the hydrant nearest to my house. I want the sewer to get out my house and into the middle of the street and down below where it belongs. This is one of those things that it's so inconvenient for everyone. We live in Minnesota. When you mentioned earlier, Ryan, how we are, you know, what the words you use, where we have to worry about the freezing and the thawing and the frost and what that does to our roads. So what we get out of the life of a road is a whole lot different for an engineer, I would imagine, compared to somebody, you know, living in a nice warm climate. So I just want everyone to, you know, I think about things that I never thought about before as a council member, right? And roads is definitely one of them. Nobody wants a crappy road, but nobody wants to be inconvenienced by fixing their road. We had a remodel here in town at Wells Fargo, and it was awesome because I would lock up the door every night and go home, and when I came back in the morning, they had remodeled my building. I didn't have to be part of it, it didn't inconvenience me, and I joked about it continually with people, how I wish we could find a way to do that in the city, right? You guys just go to sleep, and when you wake up in the morning, your roads are done, your driveway's back in place, your lawn looks beautiful again, and that is hard. It's inconvenient for everybody. And it's just, please have patience. Please understand that there's a reason for all of this. And wonderful job to Ryan and our entire public work staff for getting more time out of this, right? That's our goal. But remember, it's not just your road. You know, the roads belong to everybody in the community. You know, take pride in that. I know we as council members, as city staff do, and understand that we are all equally as inconvenienced as you guys are, because we are all homeowners in town too. So we get it. It's horrible. And you'll hear me crying when my assessment comes next, because it's gonna be a bummer. But I want to thank city staff and the community. Thank you so much for your patience. We definitely hear what you're saying, and sometimes it just, you need to be heard. It doesn't mean that we can necessarily change the way things are done, but know that it's all for the betterment of your neighborhood. So thanks so much for your time on all of this, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Liefeld. Councilmember Brox.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo what the other council members have said, and I think sometimes we can get hung up on terminology. I think it's hard as a homeowner, and I'm speaking, my street is going to be fixed probably next year, and I live on a corner as well, so I will definitely be feeling the pain next year when we have this hearing. My house will be a part of it. But I think it's a hard sell when we use terms like benefit when, as a homeowner, you're thinking, I'm not going to be able to get to my house, the street's going to be torn up, I'm not going to be able to have people parking out on the road. So I think sometimes like the terminology that we're using when we use things like the word benefit, like in the long term, it's going to be a benefit, but right now it's expensive and it seems like a pain in the butt. So I think that's this is a hard topic, because from a homeowner's point of view, like, where is the benefit to me? And I understand that feeling, but I also know that as I walk my dogs and as I go around my neighborhood and I look at how water pools in front of certain driveways inappropriately and it doesn't move to the gutter where it's supposed to, and where stuff collects where it's not supposed to, like, I also recognize, like, these are things that, although painful in the short term, they will benefit us in the long term, because then my neighbor is not going to have a big patch of frozen ice at the end of his driveway. The grading will get fixed, and that water will move to where it's supposed to go. So I'm hoping that what we can hear out of all this is hopefully a short-term pain for a long-term gain, because that's kind of how I look at it. In the short term, it's going to be painful, financially painful, and inconvenient. But I think where the benefit comes in, just like Councilmember Liefeld said, is hopefully we're going to have a better street with better grading and safer, and people are going to be able to walk, run, bike, rollerblade on it better than if it stays the way it is. So I understand that it's very painful, and that point is not lost on me. It is hard to come up with thousands of dollars to pay these assessments. I think that's why we have some of the programs that we have, so that we can help people out who need it. And we fully expect people to take advantage of those programs. They're there for you. So if you need it, please take advantage of them, and understand that as a council, I think we're just trying to do what's best for the whole community, which is one of our core functions as a city council, is to provide good streets, not only for our residents, but people who come through town. And so that's really fundamentally what we're trying to do, is to keep up and get caught up with a lot of improvements that need to be had, and they get reprioritized every year. We look at this every year and say what needs the most help, and try to look at that quantitatively, objectively, not just based on complaints or reports. We look at it on every street that the city owns in the city and what condition it's in. So thank you to everyone who showed up and spoken. We hear you, that it's going to be painful, and we're going to just do our best to make sure that we communicate the information as best as we can, and work with you in situations where it's difficult, and that's what we commit to.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Councilmember Fox.
I was going to make the comment also to the credit of Ryan and the team about making up for and catching up to where our streets should be, and how the hard work that you've done over the years recently to catch up to what the quality and standard of roads in Hastings should be. I wanted to ask if you, Ryan, could tell us a little bit about, you told council in a workshop once, and I think you can redo it, but what the difference between reclaiming and reconstructing, and what reclaiming does to a road, so that you can just mill and overlay and keep up with the road so it does last longer and we can keep the longevity of roads.
Yeah, so, yeah, there's kind of a lot there. I don't know the context I was talking about. But, yeah, we do look at different techniques, reclaiming and reconstructing. Obviously, we have budget limitations on sewer and water as well. And so if we say we're gonna reconstruct every road that needs to be reconstructed, we're gonna drain those funds down to nothing. So we don't wanna fall backwards on our street program. So we combine these reconstruction programs with reclaims. The reclaims typically have very low or no cost to our sewer and water systems, and we can just grind up the existing pavement and gravel, keep much of the curb and gutter in place, get more done for the dollars we have, and use new technologies. There's better oils each and every year coming out that are more resistant to that freeze thaw I was talking about. So we're putting that back down and investing in the latest, greatest technology amongst all these processes. We're putting down a full 4 inches so that we can come through with our mill and overlay program, mill off that top 2 inches of wear course and put it down new before it reflects down into our base layers and cause what we have to do now. So that's when, the road lasts 20 years, but maybe we get on a mill and overlay in 20, get another 10 for 30. And that's at no cost to the residents right now, that program. So we're doing all of that. I could go on for days, but I'll stop there.
I just appreciate the efficiency and the strategy behind that so that we can have some longevity in our infrastructure. And I would like to just highlight the idea of putting those speed signs over in those streets that are thoroughfares. I know living on one of those, on the other side of town, cars go really fast on wide streets. So I'd like to bring that back up as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. And I'll just add to it, we're glad you're here. We listened to your comments. Ryan in Public Works, will listen as well. And if there are some that he'll reach out to, he will do that. So we are here for you. Council, I would accept a motion to approve the resolution to adopt the assessments for project 2022-1, 2022 neighborhood infrastructure improvements. Councilmember Leifeld and Councilmember Fox. Additional discussion, Council? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Not in favor of that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Thank you for coming, and on Zoom as well. Council, if you don't mind, excuse me, I'd rather bring Tammy Amdahl in for the resolution providing the competitive negotiated sale of the bonds, and then we'll jump back into the mill and overlay. And then that way, Tammy, you can present and be on your way, if that's okay. Great. Thank you, Council.
Mayor, City Council, Tammy Amdahl with Northland Securities. You have before you tonight a resolution calling for the sale of the General Obligation Bond Series 2022A. The amount in your resolution, the $6.8 billion, is a preliminary amount. Your staff is working on including updated costs related to the Public Works storage facility on reducing that amount. So tonight is just the set sale. The final amount may actually be less than that $6.8 million. The bonds are being issued, as the council is aware, and for the public's benefit, to finance the street improvements that were just being discussed, as well as sanitary and water improvements, including water tower improvements, and the CIP related to the storage facility. One bond series with those different purposes included. With respect to the estimated interest rates, it was mentioned earlier, I think by Ryan or somebody, Rates have been rising, and it is a very volatile time in the municipal bond market. The estimated true interest cost, which is the rate that we will use to evaluate bids, these bonds are being sold through a competitive sale process, and we'll be taking bids, is an estimated approximately 2.72%. It is possible that that amount may be higher or less. Based upon that 2.72%, depending on where council ultimately sets the assessment rate, but that will be informed by that. If it were to be the 2.72% following the city's policy, but this is at the council's discretion, that rate on the assessments would be about 4% or 4.3%. We don't know that rate tonight. These bonds have not been sold, but I just want to caution the council that the market has been very volatile, and while we hope for the best and we will be marketing these bonds, we don't know that rate today. With respect to that rate, we are recommending and are in the process of working with your staff on seeking a rating on these bonds. Because of the size and the city's bonds in the past have been sold with a rating, Standard & Poor's currently rates the city's outstanding bonds at AA. That is an excellent rating. The next notch above would be AA+. I'm not expecting that, given where the market is at. I've already met with your staff along with my colleague. We have heard no concerns with respect to going into that rating call, so we would expect an affirmation, but we don't know that yet until we complete that process, and that'll be coming up shortly. But that rating and the city's strong financial management makes a difference in the bond rates that you will receive, so that is all excellent news for the city. I mentioned this will be a competitive sale on Monday, May 2nd. That morning, on behalf of the city, Northland Securities will accept bids from underwriters for the purchase of these bonds. And on that evening, then, at your regular city council meeting, you will consider the award of the bonds, and you'll know the final rate at that time. There was a lot of information that was included in your packet along with the resolution, both for the council and the public. I haven't gone into all the detail, but Mayor, I would be happy to answer any questions of yourself or the city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. Quick question on the rating. You said you're going to go out and get another rating check on our city. Does that start to affect us if we keep asking what our rating is, like a credit score? If we keep doing it, does it hurt us, or should we be doing it once every 4 years, 5 years, or do we do it every time we go out and get a bond?
Great question. The rating agency does not rate the city. They rate specific bond series. So going out multiple times when you're issuing has absolutely no negative effect on the city. That's just how the process works. It's confusing. I know oftentimes cities think that the city has a bond rating. That's not the case. A rating agency rates a specific bond series, and when they review for a new issuance, as they will for the 22A, they also affirm the rating on the existing outstanding bonds, that in this case S&P rates.
I have a follow-up, Your Honor. Historically, I remember last year it came back with a very good rate. We have labeled some projects that we're looking at here. If the rate is lower than what's anticipated, do we have the option to borrow at the amount that we want, use that extra interest rate that we're saving to bond a little bit more to help pay off for a couple more capital projects?
You do not, for this reason. When you go out with the offer and statement for underwriters to bid on, there is an amount in there, and that bid is based upon that amount. It is possible, and this may be what you're asking me, and likely that you will get something called a premium bid. In this market, underwriters will bid more than the par amount of the bonds. It is up to the city, first through your staff, to determine if that premium is used to reduce the principal amount or to fund the construction fund. Nothing is free. That premium is still, if you don't reduce the principal amount, then you end up paying back more in principal than you otherwise would at those higher coupons than underwriters. It gets very technical, but you should take away from that. It's possible and probably likely that you'll get a premium bid. We will be working with Chris and your staff on what to do with that bid. But Councilmember, I believe that may be what you're asking me about, because you would have gotten a premium bid on the last issuance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Any other discussion, council? Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was trying to remember what it was that we did actually receive for our last year when we put out for a bond. I remember it was extremely low, and my computer is dead, so I apologize if it was within the memo, but it was 1%, 1 point something percent last year,
It
wasn't
would
it?
likely, and I will send that to staff to share with the city council, because I don't have that in my head right
Oh,
now
okay.
either. But rates are up significantly. It's possible that it was, I use the term basis points, 1% greater than what this is estimated at. It's also, bonds are affected by term too. Bond rates are not like mortgages where you get one rate on your mortgage. Bonds are sold that each different maturity, shorter term carries lower rates. So I don't remember the specifics on the last issuance, but we certainly have that information. We will share it with staff to share with the city council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Okay, council, I would look for a motion approving the resolution providing for the competitive negotiated sale of general obligation bonds, Series 2022A.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Fox, additional discussion, council? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Not opposed to that motion, state by saying nay. That motion prevails. Thank you again, Tammy, for coming. And Ryan will move forward now with the Millen overlay.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Yes, a mill and overlay program, we were kind of speaking about that earlier. We actually have our 2022 mill and overlay project here. We did receive 5 bids on the project on March 24th. Competitive bids, and we're here tonight to award Minnesota Paving and Materials the amount of $452,751.93. That is within our budget for 2022 for the mill and overlay program and contingencies and soft costs. So that's good news. I do want to point out the bituminous raw material was about 32% higher than last year. So I just want to, I want to make that point. Good bids, we planned for this. We tackled the project that we felt could fit within the budget. That worked out for us. But like the volatility we were just hearing about, same way in my industry as well. Oil prices, I need to say more. Although that's up, it's still, we've had such good pricing in the past. It doesn't scare us, it's still a good value, it's still a good project. I just wanted to note that increase. But project is well within the budget we proposed in the streets we proposed to do. So recommendation for award tonight and the amount provided to Minnesota Paving and Materials. Note on that contractor, they were formerly known as Hard Drives, formerly known as Tower Asphalt. They've been in the industry forever. I've done dozens of projects with them. They come with a high recommendation, good crews, good product. So tonight, staff's recommending approval of the resolution in your packet.
Thank you, Ryan. Councilmember Fulch.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Sorry. Any discussion, council? Okay, then I would accept a motion to approve the resolution awarding contract for 2022 mill and overlay program. Councilmember Lund and Councilmember Brox. Additional discussion, council? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Thank you, Ryan. Tonight, we have amend city charter ordinances, and Kelly Murtaugh, our Assistant City Administrator, will give us an update, and followed by a public hearing and potential action by City Council. Welcome, Kelly.
Yeah. Should be down there someplace.
It's a slippery deal. Good evening, Mayor, council members. I come back to meet with you this evening as we have a scheduled public hearing and the second reading to approve the amendment to the city charter, section 1.03, ward boundaries. By way of summary, the amendment is in response to the national census of 2020. Following the census, ward populations are reviewed to determine whether or not the boundaries need to be redrawn. And then that is to make then the ward populations as equal as is practicable. The proposed changes balance the ward populations based on the census figures to within less than 2% difference between the wards. One item of note I wanted to mention this evening is that a recent annexation was inadvertently omitted in the earlier version of the map that was sent out to you and is included here and was included in your packet. The omission does not impact the ward boundary language that is within the actual ordinance, and the area specifically, oops, use the right mouse, is this piece right here. That area right there. Again, I extend my gratitude to the engineering and planning staff as well as the Charter Commission for their work in this area and the recommendations that you see before you. Mayor, I can address any questions that folks may have, or we may address the public hearing at this time.
Thank you, Kelly. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak to the public hearing for the ordinance change, please step forward. Anyone on Zoom? No one on Zoom? Anyone wishing to speak during the public hearing for the wards? Lost it. Ward boundaries, sorry, lost that word. I see no one, so at this time I will close the public hearing and open up for council discussion. No council discussion, then council, I would ask for a motion to accept and approve the charter ordinance for the city of Hastings amending precinct and ward boundaries. Councilmember Lund, Councilmember Liefeld, discussion council. All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay, and that motion prevails. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. And then under Public Works, we have a second reading and an adoption of City Code Amendment, Chapter 51.05G, and we welcome Ryan Dempsey again, and this is on water conservation.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, tonight, this is a second reading and adoption of the City Code Amendment in Chapter 51 of Water Conservation. We have this item as a first reading on the March 21st City Council. And again, the approval requires a simple majority here tonight. This issue of water conservation is specifically about time of day bans. We had a drought last summer, so we had a lot of staff discussion with the Minnesota DNR, discussion with the Department of Health, discussions with our peer communities, what were other folks doing, what, stress this puts on the aquifer, the irrigation months in Minnesota, et cetera. And that was just a temporary time of day restriction in addition to our odd even sprinkling ban. But the discussion coming out of that ban was to look at this in perpetuity. For managers of the water system, we wanted to look at being proactive to our system, going through this drought, having those conversations, wanted to get back on top of science and not promoting or allowing watering of lawns. So we're talking just sprinkling irrigation of lawns during those hot, dry summer months. A lot of that water, most of that water is evaporating. So it's kind of an inefficient use of the city water system. Talking to a lot of our Dakota County peers, many cities do this, not just in Dakota County, but metro wide. Some recommendations, some in ordinance form, some in education form. So this is really just a continuation of what we learned last year and a recommendation coming from my industry and our staff specifically to look at this in perpetuity for restricting watering between the hours of 11 and 5 p.m. So that hot, dry time of day. One other minor amendment was we understand that new sod and new lawns go in during the summer months. We want those to have a healthy start. Got a lot of calls in our department about extending the 1 week to 2 weeks, exempting those new lawns, get them off and running. They may need to water every day, all day. We understand. We don't want to get involved of those recommendations or in the middle of those recommendations. So extending that from 1 week to 2 weeks of exempting folks from our ordinance on new lawns. So with that, would stand for any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Ryan. Councilmember Vaughn?
I just want to make a comment, right? Ryan, I get best practice. I get you're talking to the neighbors, and I think, but last year was a drought, and I think I go back to when we made tough decisions on our water rates. Our water rates were based off of our structure of our ordinances of when we could water. With us making another change, I think it's going to trigger us to look at our water rates again, because if you go, I paid it. I went into Tier 4, and I felt it in my water bill. So our structure is set up, if someone chooses to use the water, they're going to pay for it. I felt it really hard in the checkbook. But I think it's best practice that we should use education to say that's one area that you should really cut back on. I think we could do a better job at educating for another year, because last year was a drought, but we should be going towards best practice of adding this thing. I just think it's too soon. I'd like to go another year of educating, because I think it was more impactful last year. When we hit a drought, we all understood it. I think everybody understood in the community. And when we made that change for that small time, it was more impactful. We made kind of awareness of it. I have a feeling this is going to get too buried into an ordinance book that says you can't do that. And I would rather go and wait for that. If we hit another drought, that it's more impactful, that we have to make another hard decision. Because if you remember, right, we made one choice and right away we had a waiver. Somebody came in saying, oh, but we have this car wash. And I get it's sprinklers, but I just think we're not there yet. I want to go one more year of education. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ryan and staff, I would like to thank you for making this recommendation to continue with water restrictions during the daylight hours. As you stated, it is a best practice, and I think it's very important that we be in tune with sustainability issues as they're becoming more and more prevalent. Just today in the news, there was a report that was released that if we don't start, as a globe, if we don't start really taking seriously our carbon emissions, by 2025, it's going to be too late for the effects of climate change, which will be overwhelming. And so it's not a matter of when we have the next drought. We know there will be a next drought, and we're seeing extremes with rain events and then drought events more and more it's becoming more often. And so I just think it's really important that we do get ahead of this and try to protect our water sources, because we know that droughts are going to become more and more often. And so I am personally in favor of this, and I think that people get used to having changes, like for instance with COVID. We all talk about what's the new norm, right? Well, I think it's easier for folks to adhere to the changes that we put in place last year, this year, rather than having a yo-yo effect where 1 year it's that there's restrictions, the next year there's not, the next year there's restrictions. I think that it's better to be consistent moving forward. And I think the majority of folks understand why it is that those restrictions are being put in place, and they want to do their part in protecting our water supply. And so I think that it's a positive. So thank you. I'll be voting in favor of this.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Leifeld?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ryan, I have a couple questions. We'll start off with two. I definitely support this. I like the idea of, so it's an automatic from May 15th, September 1st, right? odd even. We immediately go into odd even, whether or not we're experiencing drought or not, and then we're adding to it the time of day. So on my even day that I can water, I wouldn't be able to water between the hours of 11 and 5.
Correct.
Perfect, okay. Then, when I'm looking at the ordinance, and I'm looking into G under water conservation in our packet, where 1 talks about lawn sprinkling, 2 talks about water emergency, is this the wording of the original? Because the new language is underlined. They've struck through the language that's deleted. So number 1, lawn sprinkling. What is that? What are we saying there? It is unlawful for the owner or occupant to sprinkle lawn, wash a motor vehicle, or to accomplish any non-essential use. What are we addressing there? Maybe I'm,
Your G1 is what you're asking?
G1, thank you.
I think it's just saying when it's prohibited in the ordinance. So it's just a header. Maybe Corey can
Fix that.
weigh in on that more than me, more eloquently, but it's just setting up the ordinance is the way I read it. It's when it's prohibited further on in the ordinance. And that's when we come up with specific ban dates and times and things of that nature.
Because number 2 then refers to water emergency after 24 hours notice following broadcast. That would be irrelevant because we're putting this into place as I love your word, perpetuity. Right? So is section 2 necessary?
We need to have the ability to also enact an emergency situation. So it's kind of additive. It's saying, we have a drought, we had to do these things, but we may have to do more, like car washes and flowering, hand watering, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you.
And a lot of times, just to note that we're generating ideas from our water conservation plans, but we also are having restrictions imposed on us from DNR and Department of Health and others. So I can't just say, no, we don't want to do it. So got to have that in there to comply with our appropriations permit, et cetera.
I'm going to real quick follow up, and I'll let Corey speak to this. And the reason I'm going to vote yes is I agree with the best practice idea, get us on the right page. We're not saying no to fundraisers. We're not saying no to kids in the sprinklers. So that's important to me. Live your life. But all that extra stuff, as the mayor knows, I'm not big that my grass is green. It's not a big thing for me, but I know for a lot of people it's really important. So that's just so I'm going to go ahead and support this for the fact that we are allowing, unless otherwise noted, sprinkler time with the kids and all of that. So thank you, Your Honor.
Counselor, did you want to add to that?
I would, Your Honor, just to clarify what the language says, because you have to read all the words all the time, all of them. And so number 1 is just saying that you cannot sprinkle your lawn, wash motor vehicle, or accomplish non-essential uses when it's prohibited. When is it prohibited? Under number 2, or in certain circumstances under number 3. So number 1 is sort of here's the rule. When we say you can't do it, here's the things you can't do. And then under number 2, you can't do it ever. And then in number 3, you can do it, but you have to do it the odd even day and only at the allowed times.
Thank you, Counselor. Ryan, I just have a question. So anytime we change something, I'm always concerned of the education for the people. How are they going to know? I mean, will you put that in their water bills, or how will that get out to the community that it is a change? And it's going to be a, spirit of the law type thing at this point, correct?
Correct.
Education, big slip type.
Step 1 was to get this ordinance discussion going early in the season before sprinkler systems are turned on. So that's where we're at now. One of the things we would move into upon approval is updating our website and FAQs, right? So we have some of this other stuff in there. This would be added, and that was some education around it. And other ways to get the word out, yes, we have historically put things in mailers, and we have done door hangers and things of that nature. We'll kind of, gather as a management team and see what things make the most sense. But the good news is we're kind of early in the discussion phases, and we can implement those things for the season.
I appreciate it. Any other discussion, Council? Councilmember Brox.
I just had a question. I have two questions, actually. My first one is a 2-week exemption enough? Where did that number come from? I'm not a lawn sprinkling person. I don't have an irrigation system, but I would imagine that you did talk to someone who would say that, or base it on some data. What did you base that 2 weeks on?
Mostly it was the requests that came in historically. We gather that in the Public Works front office and track those requests, and they've historically asked for a 2-week extension. Now, keep in mind, that's just frequent waterings for 2 weeks. It doesn't mean that every odd even morning and evening you can then go to watering your new lawn, in compliance with the watering restrictions. So it's just that initial, if you put your sod down in a very dry, hot period of time, that 2 weeks, even in those cases, the U of M extension on lawn watering and lawn grow services will say no more than 1 inch per week. So all you're trying to do is supplement that amount, and you might have to deal with your new sod not being green, but you will hear that in all of the professional advice on the lawn watering. That's what we're trying to achieve, is the 1 inch per week.
Okay.
This was pertaining to the requests that we did get, and if there's special circumstances, those waivers can still, those phone calls can still come in for our consideration. It's not like, we don't want to see those investments die.
Right.
So this is just an average of what we've been requested and kind of complying with that, so we have an end date.
Thank you. I had a neighbor that reseeded their lawn, and I swear they were out there watering it constantly because it was from seed, and it took a lot of water. So thank you for that answer. Also, my second question is about enforcement. Who is going to be enforcing this? Is it going to be code enforcement's job to go around and monitor, or how are we planning on enforcing it?
It would be similar to the odd-even component of the ordinance, where I wouldn't say we would actively be doing rounds of this nature. We don't have the staff or time to do that specifically. It would be more of we notice it in our routines, it's egregious, those kinds of obvious factors, where if we're driving by a home every day in our routes and we see, water going constantly during the middle of the day, and we have this in place, it'll probably start with education, and then it'll start with discussion, and we'll kind of work from there. But it's kind of a staff resource answer, but we definitely will be looking and building that towards the need as we observe it.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think that's a good point that Councilmember Brox brings up. As we add more ordinances and to the mix, we need to be able to make sure that they have teeth, and what that does require is staff. To provide best practices and educate, I'm a little bit on the fence with what Councilmember Vaughn is saying. Continue to educate on the best practices, but if it's not an ordinance, then is it is the education all that effective in the end? So it's not an easy, I think it's a gray area in reality, but I think by virtue of good awareness and continually highlighting certain ordinances like this one, we can avoid having to worry too much about the burden of enforcement as well, because you don't want to be the neighbor that's that guy, you know. So I think if we don't tuck it away in the book of ordinances and, you know, only pull it out as a gotcha or whatever, but we really do make sure that at least for the first couple of seasons, I'm not saying just this year, but I would say a good couple of seasons, to create good habits and good awareness for people. I know when my garbage day is. That being said, there are Wednesday mornings where I wake up freaking out because I hear the truck driving by, okay? So I'm not perfect either, but, you know, after a while I remembered Tuesday night was a good idea to put the garbage out, right? And I think that's what we need to continue to do. And through social media, through our website, through our mailers and things like that, because I think last year, I do believe that the word got out. I saw it all over the place. I know I'm more aware, you know, because of our position that, you know, we're looking for that stuff, but people talked about it. And so if we continue to do that and make sure that it's emphasized for the next couple of seasons, I feel like it would do itself good. Otherwise, we probably are going to get into a situation where now we're really worrying about how do we enforce this, or how do we cover ourselves from the ordinances that we pass. So I will support it, but I do understand what Councilmember Vaughn is saying, and I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we can't just create ordinances without realizing that you have to support those ordinances. So,
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Vaughn.
We're becoming fully informed on the subject of this, so I just want to make a point. Everybody made great points, and I agree with the yo-yo. I don't think I'm headed towards best practice, but I think even the staff said it's first one's education, and that's what I'm asking for. Let's use another year of education. This thing is built off of somebody with a sprinkler system that's probably on a timer. We haven't thought about somebody that works nights or works afternoons. That might be their window where they can move their sprinklers or move their things. This is put that against them. So all I'm asking is just give it another year, start the education process, head towards the best practice is what I'm getting for. That's the only reason I'm not supporting it today. I'm going to get there, but I don't think we need to do a better job. I think we're reacting from the drought because it was a huge awareness, but we got to get there from a year from now. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendations to implement the water restrictions per the recommendations.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. And second by Councilmember Fox. Additional discussion, council? New discussion? All those in favor of that motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Under Community Development, we welcome John Hinsman, and he will be doing an introduction on the administrative citations. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. I will make it a very brief introduction here. We've got a very well-informed city attorney who's done the legwork here. I just want to set the stage for what's happening tonight. It's a first reading of a number of ordinances related to administrative citations. Now, we did some action to our city charter to allow this. City Attorney Land has been very instrumental in having these similar types of actions in other charter cities that have proven very successful. Ultimately, what we're trying to do here is to create an administrative process to enforce certain nuisance ordinances in a more efficient manner. That'll lead to a shorter time frame for resolution and less staff time in the production of it. So I will turn it over to Corey. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. As it was teed up for me. Thank you very much, John. This has been a long time coming that we've been talking about administrative citations, and now I'm excited to present the package of ordinances for implementation of the effective, hopefully efficient use of administrative citations to impact the city and the community on a great level, dealing with code violations, neighborhood issues, nuisance violations, just more effectively and efficiently. So I'm just going to highlight some of the provisions in the ordinances from my memo, just for the council I know is aware, but just sort of for the community's sake, you know, for all 5 people that are watching, really excited, especially at 9 o'clock at night to talk about administrative citations. So Chapter 10, this is more of a general section that will apply to all code violations. So it's the penalty section, it's the enforcement section, it's the inspection section. So this is a general location where everybody can go when they say, who can enforce, how are they going to inspect my property, and then what are the penalties related to that. So this is, the Chapter 10 encompasses those things. Then in Chapter 95 is sort of the guts of the nuisance violations and trying to identify all the different kinds of nuisances that will be enforced through this administrative citation process or the administrative penalty processes. One new public nuisance that we're really trying to emphasize is affectionately known as the unsheltered storage of junk, but I don't use the word junk. It's unused things that sort of get piled up in your property that you kind of forget are even there, but your neighbors don't forget. They see that fence that you took down 3 years ago that is still in a pile in your backyard, and you've never moved it since the day you took it down. So those are the kinds of things that code enforcement will not be looking for, because this is going to be on a complaint basis, just as it is today. But when these nuisance issues are identified, the unsheltered storage will be noted. There will be a compliance letter sent out, and if people don't comply with the compliance notice within the time frame that's specified in that notice, then we can take administrative remedies instead of what currently and today we have to issue a criminal citation. And so that is the only alternative. So we're trying to provide some administrative remedies that, again, are faster and easier for the city staff to implement. So that'll be one new regulation. In addition, in section 158 of the Property Maintenance Code, I'd like to especially highlight this is a new provision that will prohibit the off-street parking in the front and side yards adjacent to a street unless you are parked on concrete or asphalt. So no parking on grass in the front or the side yards if this ordinance is adopted, and that's in section 158. Then now that we've defined the nuisances, we're also identifying the 2 different new outlined administrative remedies. And one is abatement, and the other is the administrative citation. Abatement would be used for those violations of, again, perhaps it could be the unsheltered storage, where city staff can provide the notice, failure to comply, but these items are relatively easier for city staff to hire a contractor to go in and remove those items on behalf of the property owner, and then charge that against the violator's property. And if they fail to pay the fees for that or the costs for that, it would be assessed against the property. So that's a very swift enforcement action, because we can literally go in and remove the violation on behalf of the property owner if they couldn't resolve it themselves. For those kinds of things that are harder for us to just remove, for example, if they have a garage that's falling down or perhaps in need of repair, that's not something we're going to go in and fix for them. So that would be a situation where we would issue an administrative citation if they fail to remedy the situation themselves. And the way the process would unfold is much like it is today, at the beginning of it anyway. It starts with a compliance letter. They're given a time to comply. Failure to comply will result in either abatement or an administrative citation. And the penalties for those will be spelled out. It will say, if we abate this for you, it will be charged against your property if you fail to pay the invoice. And in the alternative, if it's an administrative citation, that letter will say, if you fail to clean it up yourself, you will be issued an administrative citation. If you fail to pay that, that will be assessed against your property. So, and the fees that the city is recommending, that we're recommending for adoption, are not astronomical fees. We're not trying to take everybody's pension away from them or their fixed income, but we are trying to get their attention that failure to comply with city ordinances have consequences. So we do have a proposed fee schedule for you. One of the things that city engineer will be able to use for his water sprinkling ban is an administrative citation. So we will have to add that to the fee schedule for failure to comply could result in an administrative citation. It might be a $20 penalty, it might be a $10 penalty. We'll have to figure out what the right amount is. I don't think it's gonna be a $200 penalty, but something that makes people realize they need to pay attention to the ordinances. So this would be a perfect tool for administrative citations, the water sprinkling. Another section that we're introducing that is brand new is in the dangerous dog section of section 91.30. We have a definition of dangerous dog. We follow state law on how to address dangerous dogs. There's a hole, though, in dealing with potentially dangerous dogs. And what I mean by that is there's a difference between a dangerous dog, which has to inflict substantial bodily harm on a person before it can be declared a dangerous dog, or killed another animal off of their property, or has attacked a person on 2 or more occasions. So that's the high standard or high bar that has to be met for a dog to be declared dangerous. And then there are certain things that have to be done once a dog is declared dangerous, such as it has to be kept in a proper enclosure, that property owner has to have a certain insurance, there has to be a microchip, and other regulations around that dangerous dog to protect the public. A potentially dangerous dog can be declared potentially dangerous on a much lower threshold if it bites a person or an animal, but it doesn't rise to the level of substantial bodily harm, which is a pretty high bar, or it chases a person in an attitude of attack. So in those situations that are less severe, but still severe to the person that it happens to, if they're bit by a dog, the police department can determine whether or not that meets the threshold of a potentially dangerous dog. And then there are other protections, lower threshold protections that would be put in place for just being declared a potentially dangerous dog, such as still has to be in a proper enclosure, still has to have a microchip implanted. Not all of the things that a dangerous dog has to have, but still protections for the public. So we're recommending that that be enacted as well. And then because our ordinances are full of references to, in every section, a violation of this section is a misdemeanor, sprinkled throughout the entire code, there is one ordinance in here that is a laundry list of just repealing all of those sections. When I prepared this, I thought I had them all, but I found 15 more just today. So your next reading it'll be a little longer, but that it truly is just cleanup to try to make the code consistent now that we're saying that there's a general penalty provision where we have all of these options and it doesn't just have to be a misdemeanor. It doesn't make sense to have sections of the code that say a violation is a misdemeanor. It's contradictory. So there's that cleanup ordinance, which again will get a little more robust the next time you see it. So as it was indicated, this is a first reading for you tonight. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Counselor. Any questions, Council? Councilmember Lund?
Sure. Can you speak to the, I don't know if you recall the meeting, the workshop where I talked about, the benefit of it to the public? There's some, these things still exist and you still have to account for them today. It's just criminally if things go down that road. And in some cases, that can actually become more costly, more frustrating, more difficult for everybody, right? And I don't think anybody truly wants to have to go down the road of going to court for certain things, even though that's kind of the only route if you're having a complaint against you. So I see that as the net benefit out of this. I know you have there's other benefits that pull through, but can you talk to that just high level?
Yep, and thank you for that question, Councilmember Lund. So right now, anybody that is that has a code violation, if they fail to comply and they just ignore all of the notices, the only ramification the city has is to issue a criminal citation. I am not of the opinion that everybody that violates city code with property maintenance issue, junk in their yard, is a criminal. They just have not complied with code. That doesn't make them a criminal. Unfortunately, that is the only place they end up. Criminal court takes a long time to process through. There are several inspections. An inspection prior to every court appearance has to be conducted, so that's a lot of staff time. And in the end, they're in court with all of the other misdemeanors and sometimes gross misdemeanor calendars that are addressing a lot more serious crime, and the judges do not give them the time and attention that the neighborhood would like it to. And so it ends up being typically a pretty low fine, none of which, or very little of which, actually goes back to the city. So it's very unsatisfying, and in the end, they may or may not have cleaned up their property. So this process, again, allows for a quicker, more efficient addressing the situation to try to get the neighborhood back to normal. A lot of these code violations can be so frustrating for the neighborhood to have to look at it day after day. And if we can either abate the violation immediately or issue an administrative citation that gets that property owner's attention a little faster than the criminal court process could, I think we've solved a lot of problems.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussion, Council? Okay, if not, I'd accept a motion approving the first reading of several ordinances relative to administrative citations, public nuances, abandoned vehicles, property maintenance, fee schedule, dangerous dogs, and criminal penalties. Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Fulch. Additional discussion, Council? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Thank you, Counselor. Then we have a resolution for site plan, Public Works Storage Building at 1225 Progress Drive, and welcome again, John.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. What we have before us tonight is a resolution approving a site plan for an expansion of the City Public Works building, about 11,000 square foot storage building, which would be placed about here at the Public Works campus. We did have this before Planning Commission at their last meeting. Planning Commission did recommend approval on this on a 6-1 vote. A very brief discussion on that one, mostly related to stormwater drainage. Taking a look at the plans itself, we're recommending approval of staff as well. There really isn't too much to the review that we saw as far as obstacles or anything that we had concerns about. It is located next to the Vermilion River within the Shoreland District, but does meet the requirements of that. So this gives you an idea of where it would be on site here. And the building itself, Public Works building, looks something like this. And the new storage building would complement that new building. The need for this building, of course, is stemmed from the lack of a building we now have that we've sold for redevelopment down at the old UBC site. So this would be built and would be used for storage for various city things. So I can stand for any questions that you may have on this one, and thank you.
Thank you, John. Any discussion, Council? Councilmember Brox?
I have one question, John. The planning commissioner that opposed the motion, can you just summarize what the opposition was?
Councilmember, I'd be speculating a bit. The discussion we had on this, the meeting was 10 minutes long. So we didn't spend a lot of time on this. I think he may have had concerns about existing stormwater flow on site, and there's some information that was not included within the packet that he may have hoped was there. I'm speculating on that one, but that would be my guess.
Thank you. And typically I would go back and watch a planning commission meeting myself, but I didn't this time, so thank you for answering my question.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Any other discussion, Council? Okay, then I would accept, you have a question?
No, I was just going to make the motion.
Okay,
So,
move forward.
yes, so I'll make a motion to move ahead with the new storage building at the Public Works.
Okay, thank you,
Facility.
Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Fox, seconded. Additional new discussion, Council? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion, state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Thank you,
All
John.
right, thank you.
We have a budget amendment to supporting building inspection services. And Dan Waticha, you may take the microphone.
Thank you, Mayor. As we've talked over the last few months, even over the last year, we've really crowed a lot about good news about all this development we're seeing coming on. I think the number is somewhere around 650 new housing starts, 850 new housing starts. I knew it was a big number. 850 new housing starts in the works. They're not all going to come in for permits next week, but they are coming in. I can see that the number of permits, anything from just replacing a hot water heater up to an apartment building, the number of permits we've been issuing over the past couple of years have increased about 50% each year. All great news, but it's getting to where I think it's safe to call it overwhelming. It's not feasible for staff to keep up with the quantity, the workload. We have a building official who has supervisory responsibilities besides the inspections, 2 full-time inspectors. We've done a little bit of changing in our staff in order to have a permit technician that can help with some of the initial intake and site plan review. We do contract out for electrical inspections. But this is the same staff level, essentially, that we had on when we didn't have all these permits coming in. And for them to keep up, it just isn't going to be doable. Need to bring in some additional staff. Over the last few weeks, we were talking with a number of different companies that you can contract with, a few individuals that we knew that we might be able to contract with. Thought we had a really good option nailed down, and that fell through about a week and a half ago. So suddenly, in short notice, saying, it's getting towards springtime, the permits are coming in, the applications, we need to move quickly. So I wish that we would have been able to bring this to council with more discussion, but really springing out in a fairly short notice tonight. Anyways, that's the situation. The proposal is multi-part, and it really builds off itself. One, asking for budgetary authority to hire an additional building inspector in order to get through the season. And hopefully there's somebody that we could keep on longer, but really right now we're just looking at what's immediately in front of us. When we look at what other cities are offering for wages on building inspectors, there's 2 groupings. One, around $40 an hour, give or take, and we're right in the middle of that. But none of those are successfully hiring anybody. It's the ones that are a bit higher, $45 or even up to $50 an hour, that are hiring. And actually, they're stealing inspectors away from other cities. Hopefully, we're not in that group. So in order to compete in this environment, looking at needing to have a wage increase, at least get above that first tier so that we're above the ones that aren't hiring. Very cognizant of, we're doing a compensation study. It won't be completed till June, July. Don't want to get ahead of that with just doing wage increases. So trying to, instead of having too big of a wage increase, have a more modest wage increase, and then supplement it with a signing and also a retention bonus to help make that more attractive with that new employee and make us competitive with that tier that is managing to hire employees or building inspectors. But as I said, this builds on itself. We have existing employees, and we've had them for a number of years, appreciate their dedication. Some concerned that don't want to see them jump ship to another city. Need to make sure that we're treating them fair and equally or similarly with the new employee coming in. So if we do a wage increase for the new employee, let's carry that same 3% increase over for our existing inspectors and building official. If we're going to do a signing bonus, let's look at doing a similar one-time bonus this fall, so it has some retention aspect to it for our inspectors, official, and permit tech. The other aspect particularly looking at in attractiveness. There's a compensation piece that's attractive to our existing employees, but also recognizing the difficulties around the workload. They're allowed to accumulate comp time when they're in lieu of overtime. With the workload, it's tough to use that comp time and take time off. I'm sure they can fit it in occasionally, but not regularly. Our building official actually has been at the cap of what we allow for comp time for 4 months and has done probably an additional 100-plus hours of overtime above that that hasn't been able to accrue to that comp limit. So recommend a one-time allowance of offering that we would buy out comp time if the existing employees wish. I think long-term, that's more of a policy piece to look at for how do we address buying out, but under the immediate circumstances, I think it makes sense here. The last piece of the recommendation is one of our existing City Hall receptionists is a half-time position, increasing her hours to 30 hours a week for the next 6 months, get through the season, really just to help with some of the helping applicants with forms, scheduling appointments, answering phone calls, taking some of that more rudimentary workload off of our permit tech or the inspectors themselves in order to free up some of that higher level work for them. I think that's the long and the short of my recommendation. The other piece I'd note, two pieces I'd note, is the bottom line. These total figures depends on the actual amount of comp time buyout or where we might hire somebody at, but it's almost $100,000. The good news to it is with all these new permits comes permit fees. So this actually would be able to pay for itself. It's not going to rely on an infusion from taxes or using the general fund. It's able to cover itself with those increased permit fees. And as an example, although there's obviously work related to it and there are more complex applications, the 5 apartment complexes that are in the works, we're estimating about $280,000 in permit fees on that. So there's definitely fees coming in that can cover this series of changes, and I think that's certainly an important part to note. With that, I know there's a lot here. It's a bit complicated, and it feels almost like a Jenga tower that, they all build on top of each other. But I can certainly answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Council, any discussion? Councilmember Vaughn?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Dan. That's a lot. I mean, but I get it. We got to. I can tell you, I don't really support the 3% increase for current employees until that study's done. I'd rather do a back pay on that one because we already said no to some employees that staff asked to raise up their wages to bring it forward. That got voted down. And so, but Dan made a good point at the end. They are offset with fees. That's how this is getting compensated. It's not going to come off of the tax payers. It's coming off of the fees. So it's directly related to it out of a budget cycle. I wish I didn't have to dissect all this. I really want to tell staff, do what you got to do so we don't slow these construction projects down. I don't want them frustrated that, I'd like to build more, I'd like to get started, but I can't get the inspections done. I think that's a business model within this that can be justified why we need to go get some more help and do what you got to do to get there. I just don't like the 3% part that it's in there. If anything, let's wait till this wage study's done, and if it proves it, then we go backwards and get them. Whenever we get somebody new hired, we use that date and go back there. Again, I'll let administration figure that out, but I support it all because it's connected to construction and fees, except for that 3% increase for current staff that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Brooks?
So the thing I was thinking when I was preparing for the meeting was that this would be a really great conversation for the administrative committee to have.
Yep.
And since I'm the chair of it, I guess my recommendation is, I understand we have time constraints, but we have our committee system to discuss things like this, because I feel like this is a really meaty topic with a lot of aspects to it that could have been hashed out in committee. So I'm not opposed to discussing it here. It's here, we are where we are, but I would say in the future, going forward, I'd really love to see a topic this large be broken down in committee, because that's why we have them. My question was more about the coverage from a cost standpoint. So if I'm reading this correctly, we can support either a full-time or part-time employee on this year, but isn't that person going to have ongoing costs year over year that would need to be budgeted? So do the costs that we're covering, is that just within 2022, we're covering these costs of the new employee, or are these, because I've been on the finance committee, and I know that year over year, our largest expenditure is employee salaries. So while I support that we're getting extra work and we have all this construction coming in and we want to be efficient, I also want to be concerned about the fact that as we add staff costs and expenses go up, we're talking about increasing taxes, we're talking about, there's a lot of other implications. So I guess the bottom line question is, when you're talking about the cost being covered, are we talking about 2022? Or are we talking about year over year?
Thank you, Councilmember. We're talking about both. The numbers I presented obviously are talking about 2022 and requesting a budget amendment in order to accomplish that. Presumably 2023, as we get into that budget planning, this will be part of that budget planning for 2023 and on. Where I do believe that, very much believe that this is sustainable, is naming those 850 apartments, or not apartments, but 850 housing units we're expecting to come on. They're not all coming in with their applications next week. They're going to be coming in over the next 2 or even 3 years. We're going to continue to see a heightened revenue from permit fees above what we've historically received, at least for the next couple of years as that builds out. It's a little bit optimistic to the economy, but it's what's presented to us. That said, I don't want to encourage anyone out the door, but knowing our staff, we're probably looking at a retirement maybe 2 years out and another one maybe 5 years out. So potentially, as we build through this current projected workload, even if nothing comes in behind it, I think we're going to have some turnover on staff so that we could potentially keep this position in place. So I hope that helps with, is it just 2022 or is it looking forward? It's looking at both.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree that the committee structure should be leveraged in certain situations like this because it is a Jenga tower. I would say the 3% comment that Councilmember Vaughn made is what I was thinking too. We really need to continue to be consistent. The message may sound different to a staff member than what is intended to be conveyed. It's not, we really just need this study to be done. We agreed to it.
Yeah.
It's just around the corner, and it will yield the proper results that we can then base our decisions on and not patchwork it. As frustrating as that can be for certain individuals, the flip side is it can be frustrating for certain other individuals for somebody else getting something ahead of time. So it's, I think, just in the vein of being consistent, even though the intent is good, your thoughts are not unfounded as to have that 3% bumper right now and whatnot. But I would say that that would be my amendment to any motion would be that we strike the 3% and await the study results.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Dan?
If I can, on the 3% piece. I understand the desire to complete the compensation study and appreciate council's commitment to doing that and not just hiring the consultant to perform the study, but in the budget backing it up to do implementation of it. That said, knowing the shortage of building inspectors out there, beyond just trying to bring somebody in this environment, I worry about keeping our existing inspectors. And for the matter of doing 3% for whatever 3 or 4 months until the study's complete, I think is a fairly low burden for the city. Maybe, not equal to everybody, all employees, but a matter of, I think is a fair and appropriate in order to keep good employees on in a department that is under pressure and we're actively hiring somebody new. I think there's some real difficulty at hiring somebody new at a higher rate and telling the existing employees that they have to wait on something that's unknown. I worry from a retention standpoint if we don't do it across the board.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I am supportive of the staff recommendations because it's true that building inspectors are in high demand right now, and I know that all cities are having a lot of problems filling those positions. I just saw emails going by today from smaller municipalities asking the question about, how to get building inspectors, and the response was that there was a private firm that you could hire supplemental staff from, which I'm sure are paying better wages. And so, I agree that we should be consistent with moving forward with the pay increases because, we all agree that we're just trying to hold a consistent line and be fair to all staff. But at the same time, I don't know about you, but I've heard from the business community where they've been having problems the last several months in getting projects moving forward because of the inspection staff that we already have and difficulties there. And so to have labor shortages on top of it because they're deciding to move on, right? Makes it even more difficult for our business community to be able to do what they need to do. So 3% is a very small amount, and it may not make much of a difference to the city, but if it at least helps in getting someone into these roles, or at least just keeping staff in these roles, I think it's very important because we all know that there's labor shortages everywhere, and we should also, as we're moving forward with this compensation study, be very mindful about that. Firefighters are in super high demand right now, and so are police officers, and not to mention public works directors, right? And so, we have to be very conscious about all of this. So if we want good staff to be filling these positions, we're going to have to compensate them as they would be compensated in other places. And something about that compensation study that I've had thought about afterwards, and I just think that there's a lot of folly in having Hastings just look at other cities that are exactly the same size as Hastings, because we're all the cities in the metro area are doing the same work. It's just the number of residents that you have in each of them, right? And so it doesn't make any sense to me to pay staff less because we only have 24,000 people within the community, whereas other communities might have 35, 40, 45,000. They're all doing exactly the same work, and it's probably they're having to work through the same amount of caseload. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And so that compensation study, the more I think about how it is that we're going about it, really just gives me a lot of heartburn. And so with that said, I just want to finally say yes, I'm supportive of Dan and his recommendations. He's trying his best to manage his staff and make sure that these important positions to our community are getting filled. So thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Layfield.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dan, I have a kind of a clarification question first before I ask my real question. Did I just hear a lullaby? It's almost my bedtime. All right. So you recommend in this spot increasing the top end of the wage rate by 3%, okay? So you said this would get us above the competitive range. So we're at a range of 32.77 to, let's say, 42.20, right? If that 3% goes into play. Is that correct? Okay. So the individual who applies, depending on their experience, would come in somewhere between those two numbers? Or would we be raising the lower end of this? So that's my first question.
If we raise the top end by 3% from, let me get the numbers right, from the current 40.97 per hour to 42.20 per hour, essentially the rest of the steps or the range below would also increase by 3%. They would all move up. So although talk about raising on the top end, the whole range shifts up with it. Yes, we would normally hire somebody in the middle of that range and have them room to progress up. And that may be a possibility here. But again, recognizing the competitiveness of the environment, I don't think we're going to be hiring in the bottom half of that range. I think we'd be hiring in the top step or two.
Okay, then my next question. So I work in a very large corporation. We recently, January, increased the minimum pay for a particular starting position by $4.75 an hour. So at that $4.75 an hour, I had employees who were not making the minimum pay any longer, right? They were below minimum pay. They got increased to minimum pay. They got increased. The rest of us didn't get a $4.75 raise because we increased the minimum pay. So this is super intriguing to me because this is a whole different level. We're not talking hundreds of thousands of employees, right? So this is really interesting. So when you're looking at increasing something by 3%, that to me doesn't automatically mean that the two building inspectors or the building official, that they're automatically getting raises. They are available to get raises upon their reviews, right? I've hit my max. I don't get a raise. I don't get a raise. Every year, I'm going to stay where I'm at until something happens to move this number up for me, right? Either I get a new job or something moves that number up. I think what we're doing right here is moving that number up, right? So let's say I'm at the top tier of my job here, and you've just increased it by 3%. I guess I don't think that means I get a raise right now. I think it means on my next performance review, I am eligible to start getting raises again, right? Because I've capped out. I'm guessing we have people capped out. We have people who have hit their top of their tier. Is that correct, Dan?
Correct. I believe 2 of the 3 employees that this affects are at the top of their tier.
So what this would do is this would allow them at performance review time, which, am I guessing it's the end of the year?
It would allow it, well, 2 things. One, it would certainly allow it at performance review time. My proposal here really is to do it now.
So back to previous points, then, I would be completely in favor, because we are waiting on this compensation study, which is terribly important, and we keep talking about it. And the big thing to me is, this is the first time I've ever been at the top of my pay scale, ever. I'm 54 years old. I really am thinking about everybody else in this building who isn't there, right? All of the people who aren't topped out. So I'm thinking about everyone here. And so when I look at this, I can get on board and say yes to the new hire, yes to the 3%, no to the you get it right now because we hired someone else. To me, that's what's happening in the economy. That's happening to all of us. If they find someone else for Mark over there tomorrow in the city of Egan, they're gonna be starting that guy out a lot higher than they started Mark out. You know, he's valuable. He's valuable. But I am concerned with because we have said no previously, and to be consistent, to quote Councilmember Vaughn, consistency is so important. I don't want to keep having this meeting every month with a different department who we need to make these adjustments because they're all working their butts off. I don't know of a single person in this place who doesn't probably deserve more money. Are all working so hard and doing such a wonderful job. But we can't keep picking at these until we get these numbers done, and that's my opinion. So the way it's written, I guess I'd have to not support it. There are pieces within it, and I think Councilmember Vaughn, you started out with that. I hate to have to pick apart a motion because so much of it is awesome. And Mark's going to agree with me on this, I can tell.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Thanks,
I am,
Robert.
and maybe I can wrap this thing up here. My goal, because it is fee-based, and Dan's given some parameter. Dan knows staff. If someone says I'm leaving, I'm good with saying I approve administration to get us through this construction season. Let's get this study done. Do what you got to do to get another inspector in here to get us through the construction season. That's all. I give you the framework. I support that because it's not coming from it's coming from fees. I support that. I don't need to pick one out or two out. I think we as council should say, administration, you do what you got to do to get us through this construction thing, and let's get this study done so we don't have to worry about who's who and what position's getting a raise at a certain time, because I think it's a slippery slope. I think we're going to hear many other departments say, you know, I really could have used that. I could have used it over here. We don't have enough lifeguards. I could really use it to get more lifeguards. We're going to hear stories. I don't want to hear any more stories. I want to hear staff say, we got this. And that's why I'm recommending we approve it. Administration, you do what you got to do. But you heard the feedback here today. There's one that's really a sticker with me, so.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn, and thank you, Councilmember Leifel. Councilmember Lund.
Oh, you looked like you weren't sure, so.
Well, I
Okay.
couldn't, the lights are,
Because mine was on.
I don't mean to belabor the point. That's exactly where my head was at too. And when Councilmember Fulch started rattling off all of the other departments that could, that are in competitive situations across the state, I was like, that's exactly the point, right? As hard as it is to toe that line to say, no, we made a decision, we made an investment of taxpayer money to do this study so that we can ensure that we have a foundational point of reference to say, yes, that position needs to have an adjustment. This position doesn't. This one does, that one. And then at least we're playing a game with the same referee and the same rule book, right? That's the thing. And I got a little bit concerned when you started naming all these departments, because I'm like, it is April, and that thing's coming in June-ish, July, whatever, right? There's a lot of council meeting opportunities to bring up another thing that now we're just, I don't even, there's going to be a certain point where the study doesn't do what we thought it was going to do, or there's going to be a lot of backtracking or patchworking or whatnot. And I know that that's not your intent, and that's probably way too extreme of a viewpoint, right? I mean, reality is we're not going to be seeing that, but I think the point being made is we really, at least a few of us have mentioned, we'd really like to be consistent. We see that there's need, and we're not arguing the need to review and adjust. It's just we really, if we could have that study today, then I'd have a different conversation, but we don't. But it's coming. And so that's where I'm coming from, but, I think Councilmember Vaughn framed it really well, and I'm glad you brought it up again and kind of summarized, the fee-based, element of this and the mentality of just get it done, but you've heard our message, so.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Layfield.
Who do the building inspectors, building officials, and senior permit tech report to?
What's that?
Who do these positions report to?
The building inspectors and senior permit tech report to the building official, and the building official and the entire department reports to the community development director.
To John? So, and just to make sure, Councilmember Vaughn, are you indicating that you agree with the 3% increase in the salaries? Did I hear that in there? Because you said you don't want to pick this apart, so you can be on board with, is that what you said, Councilmember, just to clarify?
I want to approve administration. I don't care who from city administrator down to staff. You've heard the concerns from us. Do what it takes to get some inspector hired, and do what it takes to keep the current employees here. But they have heard us loud and clear that one item, be careful using that card. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, then back to my original point. So do all the positions in that department who will be benefiting from this fee-based thing, do they all get an increase of 3%? For instance, the senior member of their staff? I'm sorry, we're on a very slippery slope here, and I voted no on another area that, I'm sorry, based on that 3%, I do not feel comfortable with that. If we were going to do that, then forget the comp and class study and start giving real raises. Figure it out, save the money, and start paying the employees. But this, and to these 4 people, I'm not saying you don't deserve more money. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, it's coming. Let's do it the right way. Here we go, I feel like we're cherry picking again. And saying to the staff, do what you feel is right, because they're making their own money? Is that what we're saying? We're saying their jobs are making more money. Well, John's running that department to begin with. So I'm sorry, unless it comes up with a different amendment to it or a different wording of it, it's the 3% piece for immediate. I don't have you raising it to hire someone in. My concern is raising these other 4 people in the interim while we wait for the study results. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Layfield. Dan?
I completely appreciate the concerns about consistency and waiting out the study. The reality of the rest of the world, you can open up the business section in the newspaper any day. The rest of the world, everybody else that's hiring, they're not waiting on our study. So, yeah, we might have another request come in a month from now or the next meeting. I heard 2 other topics earlier use the word volatile. It's a tough environment, and we're going to continue to have issues coming up while trying to get through the study. If we don't hold tight to the study, we're going to find ourselves losing good employees and still having the difficulty at trying to fill more positions with new employees rather than keeping good people on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Councilmember Fox.
I'm in support of this and the work that Dan put into this. I would like to echo one of my concerns earlier when I was speaking with Dan was that this should have been through committee, and since the contract, we're just on a different path now. But I agree in the committee structure. But the thing that I'm most concerned about right here is not getting these inspections done. If this is going to halt development, we've got bigger problems coming ahead of us. So I'm pretty nervous about that. So I'm in support of this as written, so.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. And I think Dan has done the work. I mean, we know we are urgently in need of an inspector, and we don't want to lose anyone else. I know it's not the way we all want to go around it, but it's right in front of us right now, and I think that's partially why it didn't go through committee, because we need it like yesterday. And so, I mean, I am supportive of it. Dan works hard, and he knows what these staff members need, and I think we have to support our staff, and he has to support his staff, so. I'd look for a motion.
I'll move the,
Councilmember Fox. A second by Councilmember Lund. Additional new discussion, Councilmember Vaughn.
Just verifying, then, the motion that Councilmember Fox made is as it's written. So if we vote no, that's because there's a stickler in there, then none of this stuff is an option for staff, as written. If it doesn't get support tonight from 4 of us, there's none of those options are there for staff to use. So I just want to verify that if we vote no, we're voting down the whole thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. All those in favor of the motion stated, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed of that motion, state by saying nay. Nay. And that motion still prevails. Thank you. Councilmember Fulch, you had an announcement to make?
Yes, I just wanted to give 2 quick updates. First of all, to let the council know that the Arts Task Force has been successfully meeting. They have been wonderful, just wonderful to meet with, such a talented group and very committed. So they've been meeting every other week, literally every 2 weeks on Wednesday evening. And so we've been going through well, first of all, I want to give you a heads up that the group has unanimously agreed to move forward with a recommendation for having a commission. And so they've been working through a charter document to recommend to the council, and then how to do staffing and some work plan items. And so just to give you a heads up that it is coming along, and the goal is to try to wrap all of that up by the end of May so that it can then come up to, committee for discussion in June and be a part of the planning process for the next fiscal year. The second issue I just wanted to bring up, and I know that the council knows this because Dan has sent an email to us all, it's about the Dakota Broadband Board and how what has happened is that, I want to say that there's 10 members to it. It's the county and then 9 of the cities, and what had happened was the county and 2 of the largest cities, Lakeville and Burnsville, were balking at not adopting a second agreement. It's called an IRU to move forward with, finalizing the DBB formally. And so what had happened was the Dakota board, the Dakota County Board had met, and unfortunately, they had advised staff to figure out a path to withdrawal from the DBB. And so I can't tell you how disappointed I am in their decision to do that, being that it's been a Dakota County initiative that was born out of the county, moved forward, mostly funded by the county, staffed by the county, and it's just unfathomable that then the current board members would elect to withdraw from it and not be supportive of the initiative. And so we're told at our next meeting, which will be April 13th, that the county administrator will be providing more information to the board about what their staff are seeing for withdrawal, and so I can provide you more insights then, but I think it's very unfortunate. So thanks.
Thank you for the update, Councilmember Fulch. I have a couple announcements. Free document shredding for someone else. Oh, yeah, I looked. Free document shredding for Dakota County residents on Saturday, April 9th. Spring cleanup, curbside and drop-off options, April 11th through the 22nd. On Friday, April 5th, volunteer with the Parks Department to plant a tree in celebration of Arbor Day, 1 p.m. at the Hastings River Flats. The deadline, April 15th, for musicians to apply for part of the Make the Music Day on June 21st. The application form is on the city website. United Way of Hastings will be hosting a 3-session series on fentanyl awareness on April 26th, May 3rd, and May 10th. Information at the United Way of Hastings website. Meetings coming forward, Monday, April 11th, the Planning Commission meeting, 7 p.m. Tuesday, April 12th, Parks and Rec Commission meeting at 7 p.m. Wednesday, April 13th, Arts Task Force, 6 p.m. Thursday, April 14th is Hedra at 6 p.m. And Monday, April 18th, City Council Workshop is the Strategic Initiatives at 5:30 and City Council regular meeting at 7 p.m. Could I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Lund? No discussion. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. Motion prevails. Thank you.